Elder Koveth had lived for 900 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched stars die and new worlds born. But nothing in his long life had prepared him for the files now displayed before the Galactic Assembly. "This cannot be correct," said Ambassador Thriel, her 4 arms trembling. "The data must be corrupted." Koveth wished she was right. He wished the information streaming across the holographic display was some kind of error. But he had checked it himself 3 times, and the truth remained unchanged. The species called themselves humans. They came from a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. By all measurements, they should have been children compared to the ancient races of the Assembly, but their history, their terrible, impossible history. 10,000 years of recorded warfare, Koveth said quietly. His voice carried across the silent chamber. Not 10,000 years of civilization with occasional conflicts. 10,000 years of constant overlapping wars. The Assembly members shifted uncomfortably. Some covered their eyes. Others made religious gestures of protection. They developed nuclear weapons, Koveth continued, and then used them on themselves. They created biological weapons designed to kill millions. They invented gas that melts flesh from bone. They did all of this to members of their own species. "Then they are mad," Fleet Admiral Rena declared. The Veth commander stood tall and proud, her silver scales gleaming. Clearly insane. "We should quarantine their system and let them destroy themselves." "That is what I believed," Koveth admitted, "until I studied further." He changed the display. Now it showed human cities, gleaming towers of glass and steel, parks filled with families, children playing, old people sitting peacefully in gardens. "They built these during their wars," Koveth said. "Not after. During. They created art celebrating peace while their soldiers died in trenches. They wrote philosophy about love while their bombs fell on cities. They held weddings and funerals and birthday parties while their world burned around them." "Impossible," Thriel whispered. "There is more." Koveth pulled up another file. "They have veterans, soldiers who fight in wars and then return to normal life. They become teachers, farmers, parents. They coach children's sports teams. They volunteer at community centers." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Koveth understood their confusion. Every species in the galaxy knew that war broke minds. Soldiers who experienced combat needed decades of healing. Many never recovered. Entire generations were lost to trauma. But humans somehow packaged their trauma, stored it away, and continued living. "I must meet them," Koveth announced. "I will conduct a personal evaluation before we make any decisions." Rena stepped forward. "This is dangerous, Elder. What if they are contagious? What if their madness spreads?" "Then we will know," Koveth replied. "And we will act accordingly." 2 weeks later, Koveth's shuttle landed on Earth. He had chosen a neutral location for the meeting, a small garden in a country called Korea. The humans had suggested it. The man waiting for him was old by human standards. His hair was white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He wore simple clothes and held a small pot of hot water. "Elder Koveth," the man said, bowing slightly. "I am O Sunwoo. Welcome to Earth. Would you like some tea?" Koveth studied the human carefully. According to the files, O Sunwoo had served in 3 wars. He had killed enemy soldiers with his own hands. He had watched friends die beside him. He had ordered strikes that destroyed entire battalions. And now he was offering tea to an alien visitor with hands that did not shake. "You were a soldier," Koveth said. Sunwoo smiled gently. "I was many things. A soldier, yes. Also a father, a husband, a teacher. Now I am a diplomat. I find this work more satisfying." "How do you do it?" Koveth could not help asking. How do you carry such violence inside you and still function? Sunwoo poured the tea slowly, his movements precise and calm. We do not carry it alone, he said. We share the weight with our families, our communities, our nations. We built systems to help each other heal. It is not perfect. Many of us struggle, but we survive together. Koveth accepted the tea. It was warm and slightly bitter, strangely comforting. Your species, he said carefully, you choose when to fight and when to stop. Yes. Other species fight until exhaustion forces them to stop. You simply decide. Sunwoo nodded. War is a tool to us. A terrible tool, but a tool nonetheless. We use it when we must. We put it down when we can. Koveth felt something cold move through his ancient body. He suddenly understood why the assembly was afraid. It was not the human capacity for violence that terrified them. Every species could be violent when pushed far enough. It was the control. The horrifying, absolute control. Humans could turn their violence on and off like a light switch. They could wage war with mechanical efficiency and then go home to kiss their children. They could kill in the morning and plant flowers in the afternoon. No species in the galaxy could do this. War consumed other races. It defined them until it destroyed them. But humans had made war their servant instead of their master. Koveth finished his tea and stood. I must return to the assembly, he said. I will give my report. Will you recommend our membership? Sunwoo asked. Koveth paused at the shuttle door. I do not know yet. I must think. He thought for the entire journey back. He thought as he stood before the assembly again. And when they asked for his conclusion, he spoke honestly. They are not mad, he said. That is what frightens me. The chamber fell silent. Koveth continued. We passed Statute 7 Omega because war destroys species. It breaks their minds, their cultures, their spirits. We believed this was universal truth, but humans prove us wrong. War did not break them. It forged them into something we have never seen before. Before anyone could respond, an urgent message flashed across the display. The Veth Empire had declared war on 3 Outer Rim species. Rena's forces were already mobilizing. The assembly erupted in panic. Koveth watched them argue and shout, frozen by fear and indecision. Then a soft voice cut through the chaos. Ambassador Sunwoo had somehow appeared via holographic link, still holding his teacup. It seems you have a problem, the old human said calmly. Would you like our help? The assembly fell silent, caught between 2 different kinds of fear. Koveth looked at the gentle old man who had killed soldiers and planted gardens, who had waged war and made peace, who carried violence in his heart like a sheathed sword, and he understood that the galaxy would never be the same. The horizon's edge cut through space like a knife through silk. Captain Kang Jinho stood on the bridge, watching stars blur past the viewport. His ship was officially classified as a diplomatic observation vessel. Everyone knew what that really meant. They were being tested. Captain, Lieutenant Park Yuna called from her tactical station. I have completed my analysis of Veth combat patterns. Jinho walked over to her console. Yuna was young, barely 30, but her mind worked faster than anyone he had ever known. She could look at a battlefield and see patterns that others missed. What did you find? He asked. Yuna pulled up a holographic display showing 6,000 years of Veth military history. They fight the same way every time, she said. Same formations, same tactics, same response to every situation. They have never needed to adapt, Dr. Choi Minji said, joining them. The ship's psychologist was small and quiet, but her voice carried weight. The Veth have fought 4 wars in 6,000 years. Each one lasted less than a decade. They approach combat like a ritual, not a survival situation. Jinho studied the display. He had spent 20 years in the Korean Navy before the first contact. He had fought in the last Pacific War, when the oceans burned and millions died in a single week. That war had lasted 3 months and changed everything. The Veth had no idea what real war looked like. "What about their enemies?" he asked. "The species they are attacking now." "Similar patterns," Una replied. "The Thal Dominion has not fought a major conflict in 800 years. The Outer Rim colonies have never experienced war at all." Down in the ship's lower decks, Sergeant Bay Tejo was having a different kind of education. "You are afraid of dying," he said to the Thal soldiers gathered in the training bay. Their blue skin had gone pale, their 6 eyes wide with terror. "Of course we are afraid," one of them said. His name was Velith, and he was supposed to be a veteran officer. "Only the insane do not fear death." Tejo grinned. He was a big man with a loud voice and an easy laugh. People often mistook him for simple. They were always wrong. "Fear is normal," Tejo said, "but fear can be controlled. Watch." He demonstrated a breathing technique that human soldiers had used for centuries. Slow inhale, hold, slow exhale. Simple but effective. "This will not work," Velith protested. "Try it." The Thal soldiers tried. After 10 minutes, Velith looked up with amazement in his eyes. "The fear is still there," he said, "but it is smaller." "Manageable." "Exactly." Tejo clapped him on the shoulder. "Now imagine practicing that for 20 years. Imagine your entire species developing techniques like this across thousands of years of constant warfare. That is what humans are." The Horizon's Edge reached the conflict zone 3 days later. They were supposed to observe only, recording data for the Assembly's evaluation. Jinho kept his crew ready anyway. He was right to do so. The distress call came at midnight, ship time. A convoy of refugee ships from the Outer Rim colonies fleeing the Veth advance. 12,000 civilians, including 4,000 children, and a Veth strike force closing in to destroy them. "Orders, Captain?" Una asked. Her voice was calm, but her fingers hovered over the weapons controls. Jinho looked at the tactical display. The Veth ships outnumbered them 3-1. They had heavier weapons, stronger shields. By any reasonable calculation, intervention was suicide, but reason had limits. "We are here to observe," Jinho said slowly. Una's face remained neutral, but he saw something flicker in her eyes. Disappointment, acceptance. "And I observe," Jinho continued, "that 12,000 innocent people are about to die." The bridge crew straightened. Tejo's voice came over the comm from the Marine Bay. "About time, Captain." "Lieutenant Park," Jinho said formally, "you have tactical command. Show them what humans learned from 10,000 years of war." Una's hands flew across her console. "All crew, battle stations, this is not a drill." The Horizon's Edge turned toward the Veth fleet. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. Una did not fight fair. She did not follow patterns or honor traditions. She used every dirty trick in humanity's bloody history. She targeted engines first, crippling ships rather than destroying them. This forced other Veth vessels to slow down and assist their wounded comrades. She used the refugee convoy's heat signatures to mask torpedo launches. She sent false communications that made Veth ships fire on each other. In 11 minutes, she disabled 7 ships and destroyed 3. The remaining Veth forces retreated in confusion. 12,000 refugees survived. 4,000 children would grow up because a human woman had learned that war was not about honor. It was about winning. The Horizon's Edge escorted the convoy to safety. The grateful refugees wept and called them saviors. Jinho felt the familiar weight settle on his shoulders, the weight every soldier carries after battle, whether they won or lost. He found Dr. Minji in the medical bay, treating a wounded Thal child. The girl had been hit by debris when a Veth shot grazed the refugee ship. She would live, but she would carry the scar forever. The Assembly is watching the combat recordings, Minji said quietly. Every species in the galaxy has seen what Yuna did. Good, Jinho replied. Let them see. They are afraid, Captain. Not impressed. Afraid. Jinho watched the little Thal girl sleep, her breathing steady under the sedatives. He thought about all the children he had seen in war, the ones he had saved, the ones he could not save. They should be afraid, he said at last. Fear keeps you alive. Fear makes you careful. Fear reminds you that violence has consequences. He paused, then added softly, But we are not monsters, Doctor. We are just humans, and humans have been fighting monsters for a very long time. Across the galaxy, Elder Koveth watched the combat footage for the 7th time. His hands trembled. 11 minutes. The humans had dismantled a superior force in 11 minutes, using tactics no species had ever considered. They had turned the Veth's own predictability into a weapon. They had fought without honor, without tradition, without any of the rules that civilized species considered sacred. And they had done it to save strangers. Koveth did not know whether to be terrified or inspired. Perhaps both. Perhaps that was the only reasonable response to humanity. Fleet Admiral Rena appeared on his screen. Her silver scales were dark with rage. "You see now," she hissed. "You see what they are. We must destroy them before they destroy us." Koveth looked at the frozen image of Captain Jinho carrying the wounded Thal child to safety. The human's face showed exhaustion, sorrow, determination, but not madness, not bloodlust. "I see them," Koveth replied carefully, "but I do not think I understand them yet." He ended the call and continued watching. Somewhere in that footage was the truth about humanity. He just had to find it before it was too late. The Galactic Assembly was in chaos. Fleet Admiral Rena stood at the center podium, her voice echoing through the great chamber like thunder. "I move to classify humanity as a Class 1 existential threat," she declared. "The evidence is clear. They are weapons in the shape of people. They must be contained or destroyed." Elder Koveth listened from his seat among the senior delegates. He wanted to argue, but he did not know what to say. The combat footage from the Outer Rim played on every screen. 11 minutes of brutal efficiency. 11 minutes that proved humans were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "They saved 12,000 refugees," Ambassador Thriel pointed out weakly. "Today," Rena replied, "today they chose to save lives. What happens when they choose differently? What happens when they decide we are the enemy?" No one had an answer. Aboard the Horizon's Edge, the crew struggled with a different kind of battle. Dr. Minji had been assigned to explain human combat psychology to a delegation of Assembly observers. It was not going well. "You do not understand," said Delegate Vorn, an elderly Thal scholar. "We have seen your soldiers. After the battle, they ate dinner together. They made jokes. How is this possible?" Minji chose her words carefully. Humans developed a psychological ability called compartmentalization. We can separate our experiences into different mental spaces. The soldier who fights in the morning can be the father who plays with his children in the evening. Vorn's 6 eyes went wide with horror. "You can simply turn it off? The violence? The trauma?" "Not turn it off," Minji corrected. "Store it. Process it later in safe spaces with trusted people. It is not perfect. Many of us carry deep scars, but it allows us to function." "This is monstrous," Vorn whispered. Minji felt a flash of anger but controlled it. "Is it monstrous to survive? To protect our families? To keep living despite everything we have endured?" The conversation ended without resolution. Minji retreated to her office and sat in darkness, thinking about her father who had served in 3 wars, her mother who had been a military nurse, Her grandfather, who still woke up screaming from dreams of battles fought 70 years ago. They carried their pain like stones in their pockets, heavy, always present, but manageable. That was what it meant to be human. Lieutenant Yuna was having her own crisis. She sat in the tactical center, reviewing the battle data, trying to understand what she had done. 7 ships disabled, 3 destroyed. Unknown number of Veth crew members killed or wounded, all in 11 minutes, all according to patterns she had calculated months before the battle. A knock at the door. Captain Jinho entered. "You are troubled," he said. Yuna did not turn around. "I have been thinking about their fear, the assembly, the Veth, everyone. And they are not afraid of our violence." Yuna finally looked at him. "Every species can be violent when pushed hard enough. The Veth wage war. The Thal have executed criminals. Even the peaceful Outer Rim colonies defend themselves when attacked." Jinho sat down beside her. "Then what frightens them?" "Control." Yuna pulled up her battle analysis. "I made 47 decisions during that engagement. Each one was calculated, deliberate, chosen. I was not angry. I was not afraid. I was simply effective." She highlighted a specific moment, the point where she had used civilian heat signatures to mask her torpedo launch, a decision that violated every rule of honorable combat. A decision that saved 12,000 lives. "They fight with passion," Yuna continued. "When they are pushed to violence, they lose themselves in it. The violence controls them until exhaustion forces them to stop. But we choose. We decide when to start, how far to go, when to end it." Jinho nodded slowly. "We treat violence like a tool." "Exactly, and that terrifies them more than any weapon we could build." Below decks, Sergeant Taiho was learning this lesson the hard way. He had spent the past week training with Thal soldiers, teaching them human combat techniques. They had made progress. Some of them could control their fear now. Some of them were learning to think tactically. But one of them, a young soldier named Keleth, had said something that broke Taiho's heart. "You are a born killer," Keleth had said, not as an insult, as a simple statement of fact. "Your species was designed for violence." Taiho had smiled and made a joke. That was what he always did. But later, alone in his quarters, he had sat in the dark and remembered. He remembered his first battle when he was 22. The terror, the confusion, the moment when he had to choose between dying and killing. He remembered coming home and not being able to sleep for months. He remembered the therapy, the medication, the long, slow process of learning to live with what he had done. Born killer. As if he had never been a child who cried at sad movies. As if he had never loved anyone, never planted flowers in his mother's garden, never wanted nothing more than peace. Dr. Minji found him there, sitting in darkness. "Keleth did not mean it as an insult," she said softly. "I know." Taiho's voice was rough. "That makes it worse." Minji sat beside him. She did not turn on the lights. Sometimes darkness was a kindness. "My family has served in the military for 7 generations," she said. "My great-great-grandmother was a field medic in a war so terrible that her entire generation refused to speak of it. She saved hundreds of lives and watched thousands die. When she came home, she became a pediatrician. She spent 40 years healing children." Taiho listened without speaking. "She was not a born killer," Minji continued. "None of us are. We are people who learn to do terrible things so that others would not have to. We carry that weight so that children can play in parks and old people can sit peacefully in gardens." "How do we make them understand that?" Taiho asked. "I do not know," Minji admitted. "Perhaps we cannot. Perhaps all we can do is show them over and over until they finally see." On the assembly homeworld, Elder Koveth received a disturbing report. An asteroid had been detected on collision course with a Veth colony world. Impact would occur in 6 days. The planet held 2 million civilians. Fleet Admiral Rena refused to divert military resources for evacuation. "We are at war," she stated coldly. "Sacrifices must be made." The assembly debated for hours. No species had enough ships nearby to help. The Veth colonists were going to die. Then a message arrived from Earth, from Ambassador O. Sunwoo. "We can help," the old human said simply. "Our fleet is already in position. We can evacuate the colony before impact." The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what this offer meant. Humans with access to vulnerable Veth civilians. Humans who had just humiliated the Veth military. Humans who could do anything they wanted with 2 million helpless people. Rena's voice was sharp with anger. "This is a trap. They want access to our people so they can..." "So they can what?" Koveth interrupted. "Save them? Is that so impossible to believe?" "They are human," Rena spat the word like a curse. "They cannot be trusted." Koveth looked at the holographic image of Sunwoo. The old human's eyes were calm, patient, kind. He had killed soldiers and planted gardens. He had waged war and made peace. "Perhaps," Koveth said slowly, "it is time to find out what they truly are." The vote was close, but in the end, the assembly chose hope over fear. The humans were coming. The Veth colony world of Cathara Prime was beautiful. Tall purple forests covered gentle hills. Crystal-clear rivers wound through valleys filled with flowers. 2 million people lived there, building lives they thought would last forever. Now an asteroid the size of a small moon was racing toward them, and they had 6 days to escape or die. The horizon's edge arrived first, leading a fleet of 17 human ships. Captain Jinho stood on his bridge, watching the chaos unfold on the planet below. Shuttles launched in desperate confusion. Ground vehicles clogged every road leading to the spaceports. Children cried in their parents' arms, while officials shouted orders that no one followed. "Time to impact?" Jinho asked. 142 hours, Lieutenant Yuna replied. Her voice was calm, but her fingers flew across her console. Calculating. Always calculating. "Current evacuation rate will save approximately 600,000 people. We need to triple our efficiency. Then we triple it." Jinho opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Kang. We have 142 hours to move 2 million people off this planet. I want landing zones established in 12 locations. I want shuttle rotations every 40 minutes. I want organized loading protocols implemented within 6 hours. The Veth governor appeared on screen. Her scales were dull with stress, her eyes wild with fear. "Captain, our people are panicking. We cannot control them." "You don't need to control them," Jinho said. "Just point them toward us." Within an hour, human Marines were on the ground. Sergeant Taiho led his squad into the largest city, where the panic was worst. Streets were clogged with vehicles. Families dragged possessions they would never be able to take with them. An elderly Veth man sat alone on a park bench, staring at nothing, too overwhelmed to move. Taiho approached him gently. "Sir, we need to get you to a ship." The old man looked up, his eyes focused slowly. "You are human." "Yes, sir." "You destroyed our fleet. My grandson was on one of those ships." Taiho felt something heavy settle in his chest. "I'm sorry, sir. Truly sorry." The old man studied him for a long moment. Then he slowly stood. "Help me walk. My legs do not work so well anymore." Taiho supported him carefully, guiding him through the chaos toward the nearest loading zone. Behind them, other Marines were doing the same thing, helping the confused, carrying the weak, directing the scared. No weapons raised. No threats made. Just humans doing what humans had learned to do through thousands of years of disasters. On the horizon's edge, Yuna coordinated the evacuation with brutal efficiency. She had divided the population into categories based on mobility, medical needs, and family groups. She had calculated optimal shuttle routes that avoided traffic patterns. She had even predicted which neighborhoods would panic first and positioned response teams accordingly. It was working. The evacuation rate was climbing. But on day 3, things went wrong. A group of Veth hardliners had gathered at the main spaceport. They called themselves the Purity Movement, and they believed that accepting human help was worse than death. They had weapons. They had barricaded the main terminal, and they had taken hostages. "They are demanding that all human ships leave immediately," the Veth governor reported, her voice shaking. "They say they would rather die than be saved by monsters." Jinho looked at the tactical display. The hardliners held 200 civilians. More importantly, they blocked access to the planet's largest evacuation point. Every hour they held that position, thousands of people would not escape. "Captain," Yuna said quietly, "I can have them neutralized in 4 minutes." "Casualties?" "Estimated 12 to 15 hardliners killed. 0 hostage deaths if we execute perfectly." Jinho closed his eyes. 12 to 15 deaths. Nothing compared to the millions at risk. Any military calculator would call it acceptable losses. But he was not just a military calculator. "No," he said. "We go in non-lethal." The assault team moved in 30 minutes later. Taiho led from the front, armed with stun weapons and flashbangs. His orders were clear: disable, do not destroy. The hardliners opened fire immediately. Taiho felt bullets crack past his head. One caught him in the shoulder. His armor absorbed most of the impact, but the bruise would last for weeks. He did not fire back. Not yet. "Covering positions," he ordered. "Smoke out." The terminal filled with thick white smoke. The hardliners could not see. They could not aim. They fired blindly, wasting ammunition on shadows. Taiho's Marines moved through the smoke like ghosts. One by one, they found hardliners and disabled them. Stun rounds, chokeholds, pressure point strikes, violence without killing, control without destruction. In 7 minutes, it was over. 200 hostages freed, 18 hardliners captured, 0 deaths on either side. Taiho stood among the groaning prisoners, breathing hard. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead where a bullet had grazed him. His hands trembled with adrenaline. One of the hardliners stared up at him with hatred in his eyes. "Why did you not kill us? We would have killed you." Taiho knelt down to meet his gaze. "Because killing was not necessary, and we only do what is necessary." Dr. Minji spent the next 2 days treating Veth patients in overcrowded medical tents. She set broken bones, treated panic attacks, held the hands of terrified children. She did not sleep for 47 hours. On the 5th day, Elder Koveth arrived. He found her in a makeshift hospital, examining a Veth woman whose pregnancy had been complicated by stress. "She will need surgery soon," Minji said without looking up, "but she should survive. The baby, too." Koveth watched her work. Gentle hands, calm voice, complete focus on the patient. Nothing in her manner suggested that she came from a species that terrified half the galaxy. "I have a question," Koveth said finally. "One that has haunted me since I first read your history files." "Ask. How do you live with it? The violence in your nature. The capacity for such destruction." Minji finished her examination and stood. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were clear. "We know what we are," she said simply. "We know the darkness inside us. That is why we build cages." "Cages?" "Laws, ethics, traditions, institutions. Every human society has rules about when violence is acceptable and when it is not. We create these rules not because we are naturally peaceful, but because we are naturally dangerous. We built cages for the monster so that the monster would not consume us." Koveth considered this. "And the cages hold?" Minji smiled sadly. "Not always. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes the monster breaks free. But we rebuild. We learn. We make the cages stronger. Every generation tries to be better than the last. Outside, the evacuation continued. Shuttles rose and fell like birds. Families boarded ships that would carry them to safety. Children slept in the arms of human marines who had killed enemies and saved strangers. On day 6, 2 hours before impact, the last shuttle lifted off from Cathara Prime. 2 million people saved, not a single civilian lost. Captain Jinho watched the asteroid strike from orbit. The explosion was beautiful in a terrible way, a flower of fire that consumed an entire world. Everything the Veth colonists had built there was gone forever, but the people survived. That was what mattered. Fleet Admiral Rena watched the same footage from her flagship. Her scales had gone pale, her hands clenched into fists. The humans had done the impossible. They had saved a Veth world without asking for anything in return. They had captured terrorists without killing them. They had proven that their violence could be controlled, directed, restrained. They were more dangerous than Rena had ever imagined. She began planning immediately. If humanity could not be provoked into aggression, they would have to be destroyed before they became too strong to stop. The galaxy was about to learn one final lesson about what war created. Elder Koveth arrived at the human embassy in the middle of the night. His robes were torn, his breathing heavy. He had run the last kilometer himself, trusting no one with what he knew. Ambassador O Sunwoo was waiting for him. Somehow, the old human always seemed to know when visitors were coming. "Fleet Admiral Rena," Koveth gasped. "She has assembled a coalition. 12 species have agreed to a preemptive strike against humanity. They launch in 48 hours. Sunwoo's expression did not change. He simply nodded and poured 2 cups of tea. "Thank you for warning us," he said. "Please, sit. Catch your breath." "You do not understand." Koveth grabbed the old man's arm. "She has gathered nearly 400 warships. Your fleet is scattered. Your homeworld is undefended. This is not a battle you can win." Sunwoo smiled gently. "Elder Koveth, humanity has never won a war by fighting fair. Please, sit. We have work to do." 20 hours later, the horizon's edge found itself trapped deep behind enemy lines. Coalition forces had moved faster than expected, cutting off retreat routes, boxing human ships into an inescapable corner. Captain Jinho stood on his bridge, surrounded by the grim faces of his crew, 3 human ships against 100 enemy vessels. By any rational calculation, they were dead. "Orders, Captain?" Lieutenant Yuna asked. Her voice was steady. It was always steady. Jinho thought about everything he had learned in 40 years of military service. Every battle, every victory, every defeat, every desperate situation that seemed impossible until it wasn't. "We're not going to fight them," he said. The bridge went silent. "Sir?" Taeho's voice came over the comm from the Marine Bay. "Did you say we're not fighting?" "I said we're not fighting them the way they expect." Jinho turned to Yuna. "Lieutenant, I want you to open communication channels to every enemy ship individually, not broadcast. Private messages to each crew." Yuna's eyes widened with understanding. "Information warfare. They were told we're monsters. They were told we want to conquer and destroy. Let's show them something different." The first messages went out within the hour. Simple questions directed to ordinary crew members on coalition ships. "Why are you here? What did humans ever do to you? Do you really want to die for Fleet Admiral Rena's fear?" The responses started slowly. Confused, suspicious. But they came. "We were told you would attack us first. We were told you cannot be reasoned with. We were told you enjoy killing." Yuna answered each one personally. She told them about the evacuation of Cathara Prime. She told them about the hardliners who were captured instead of killed. She told them about Sergeant Taeho carrying an old man whose grandson had died in the first battle. She told them the truth. Meanwhile, Tejo led surgical strikes against coalition supply lines. Not attacks designed to kill, but attacks designed to confuse and demoralize. He disabled engines instead of destroying reactors. He captured ships instead of vaporizing them. Every prisoner was treated with respect, given food and medical care, then released to spread word of their treatment. The coalition began to fracture. Species that had joined out of fear started questioning their commanders. Crews refused orders they thought were wrong. 3 ships defected outright, crossing lines to surrender to humans who treated them better than their own admirals. Fleet Admiral Rena watched her coalition crumble with mounting fury. She had assembled the largest military force in galactic history, and it was falling apart because of words, because of questions, because humans understood something that she never had. War was not just about weapons. It was about will. And human will was forged in fires that made her people look like children. On day 2, Rena made her move. She led her flagship directly toward the horizon's edge, escorted by her 20 most loyal ships. If she could destroy the human command vessel, if she could prove that humans could be beaten, the coalition would rally. Jinho saw her coming. He ordered his ships into a defensive formation and waited. The battle was short and brutal. Yuna's tactics were flawless as always. She crippled enemy ships with precision strikes, turned their formations against them, exploited every weakness in their predictable patterns. But Rena was smarter than her subordinates. She learned. She adapted. In the end, both flagships drifted in space, weapons exhausted, shields failing. Rena's vessel was crippled. One more shot would destroy her completely. The entire galaxy watched. Every species that had feared humanity, every being that had wondered what humans truly were, waited to see what would happen next. Captain Jinho opened a channel to Rena's ship. The fleet admiral appeared on screen, her silver scales dull, her eyes burning with defiance. "Do it!" she snarled. "Finish what you started." Jinho looked at her for a long moment. He thought about all the people who had died in this stupid war. He thought about all the fear and hatred that had brought them to this moment. He thought about what it would mean to kill her now, when the whole galaxy was watching. "No," he said. Rena's eyes widened. "What? We could destroy you. We have the power. We have the right. You attacked us first." Jinho's voice carried across every channel, to every ship, to every world. "But we choose not to. That is what it means to be forged by war. We learned when to fight. We learned when to stop." He paused, then added softly, "We learned that victory without mercy is just another form of defeat." The silence stretched across the stars. Then, slowly, Rena's remaining ships began to stand down. Weapons powered off. Shields lowered. The war was over. 1 month later, the Galactic Assembly voted to amend Statute 7 Omega. The new text was simple but profound. Exposure to prolonged warfare is prohibited not because it destroys species, but because in rare cases it creates something the galaxy is not prepared for. Humanity was granted provisional membership. They would be watched. They would be studied. They would be feared for generations to come. But they would not be destroyed. Elder Koveth met with Ambassador Sunwoo one final time in the same garden where they had first shared tea. The old human looked tired but peaceful. His hands, steady as always, poured 2 cups. "I have spent many nights trying to understand your species," Koveth admitted. "I have read your history. I have watched your soldiers. I have seen both your violence and your mercy." "And what have you concluded?" Koveth accepted the tea. It was the same blend as before, warm and slightly bitter, strangely comforting. "I concluded that I was asking the wrong question," he said. "I kept asking what humans are capable of doing. I should have asked what humans choose not to do." Sunwoo smiled. That is perhaps the kindest thing anyone has ever said about us. It is also the most frightening. Koveth met the old man's eyes. You could have conquered us. You could have taken revenge for all the fear and hatred. You had every justification. But you chose peace. Yes. Why? Sunwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft with age and wisdom. Because we have seen where the other path leads. We have watched empires built on conquest crumble into dust. We have buried too many children who died in wars that should never have been fought. We carry 10,000 years of blood on our hands, Elder Koveth. We know exactly what we are capable of. He raised his teacup in a small toast. That is why we choose to be something better. Koveth raised his cup in return. They drank together in silence, two old beings from different worlds, sharing a moment of peace in a galaxy still learning what peace meant. Outside the garden, the stars wheeled slowly overhead. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled alongside alien vessels. Human diplomats negotiated with former enemies. Human teachers shared their history, all of it, the glory and the shame, with species that had once called them monsters. The galaxy was changing. It would never be the same, and in the end, that was perhaps humanity's greatest victory. Not conquest, not domination, but the simple choice to be better than their own history. They were forged by war, but they chose peace. That was what it meant to be human. Ooh.